South Korea is famous for K-pop and Samsung. But did you know that almost every former president here ended up in prison, assassinated, or took their own life? Why? This country has one of the highest suicide rates in the world. Students study up to 16 hours a day, and on the day of the national exam, even flights are delayed so planes don't disturb the test. And the elderly? Every third senior lives below the poverty line, many working as cleaners or laborers, even in their 80s. Youth face brutal beauty standards. South Korea is the world's leader in plastic surgeries per capita. South Korea is often portrayed as a land of innovation and global success. But beneath the neon lights and gleaming skyscrapers, there is a darker reality, a silent epidemic that touches everyone. South Korea has one of the highest suicide rates in the developed world. Every day, around 35 people take their own lives. For young people, suicide is the leading cause of death, while among the elderly, it is a tragic response to poverty, isolation, and hopelessness. The numbers are staggering. In 2022, the overall suicide rate was 25.2 per 100,000 people, far above the average in OECD countries. For teenagers, the pressures are relentless. Academic expectations, bullying, and family demands create a storm of stress that many feel powerless to escape. And it doesn't stop there. Middle-aged and older adults face different, but equally crushing pressures. South Korea has one of the highest rates of elderly poverty among developed nations. Many retirees cannot survive on their pensions and are forced to continue working physically demanding jobs into their 70s and 80s, sometimes even longer. The loneliness is overwhelming. The streets of Seoul and smaller cities are quietly filled with the elderly, struggling to find dignity in work that barely pays. The cultural stigma surrounding mental health makes things worse. Seeking help is often seen as a weakness, and mental health services are still limited, especially for older generations. Many people suffer in silence, feeling that there is no escape. But suicide in South Korea is not just an individual tragedy, it is a reflection of systemic pressures. The nation's intense emphasis on achievement, social conformity, and reputation weighs heavily on its citizens. Families feel the burden of raising successful children. Students live under immense academic pressure. Adults work long hours with little respite. Every failure, every setback, can feel like a personal catastrophe. Even public awareness campaigns struggle to counter the scale of the crisis. The government has implemented hotlines, counseling services, and educational programs, but the cultural and systemic roots are deep. Suicide remains the leading cause of death for those aged 10 to 39, and for many older Koreans, poverty and isolation make it a constant threat. In short, South Korea is a society where success is celebrated loudly, but despair often remains invisible. Imagine a country where airplanes stop flying because of school exam, the stock market opens late, and the police rush late students to class with sirens on. This is South Korea, and this is only the beginning. Once a year, the entire nation slows down for single exam, the Sungyeong. During the English listening section, all flights are grounded for 35 minutes. Government offices open later, subways run more frequently, and late students are escorted by police motorcycles. On this day, the adult life of millions depends on the sound of a timer. To make it to this day, families pour money into after-school academies, hagwons. In 2023, private spending on education hit a record 27 trillion won. On average, 434,000 won per child every month. Nearly 8 out of 10 students attend extra classes. And in 2024, costs climbed even higher. The most disturbing part is the starting age. It's not just high schoolers. Nearly half of children under 6, and even 1 in 4 toddlers under 2, already attend prep schools. This isn't education. It's a marathon that begins in kindergarten. On exam day, Korea becomes silent. But this silence isn't about care. It's about fear of failure. Airplanes are quiet for 35 minutes, and many teenagers are silent for the whole year. The system builds champions and breaks millions. But the pressure doesn't end at the university gates. Ahead lie giant corporations, endless overtime, and the cult of beauty. While young people face extreme academic and social pressures, South Korea's elderly face a different kind of struggle, one that is silent, invisible, and often ignored. South Korea has one of the highest rates of elderly poverty among developed nations. About 1 in 3 seniors lives below the poverty line. Many retirees receive pensions so small they cannot cover basic necessities like food, medicine, or heating. For these elderly citizens, retirement does not mean rest. Many continue to work physically demanding jobs well into their 70s and 80s, cleaning streets, selling vegetables at markets, collecting recyclables, or working as day laborers. These are not exceptions. They are the norm for a society that has rapidly modernized but failed to care for its aging population. Isolation makes the situation even more tragic. Traditional family structures are changing, and many elderly people live alone. Social support is limited, and the cultural stigma around asking for help leaves many suffering in silence. Loneliness, chronic illness, and financial stress combine, creating a perfect storm that drives despair. The human cost is staggering. Elderly South Koreans die from preventable causes, suffer from depression, and experience daily hardships that are almost unimaginable to younger generations in the country's urban centers. This is the population that built modern South Korea, and now, in their final decades, they often face neglect and hardship. This crisis isn't just about money. It's about dignity, respect, and the value of life. In a nation that celebrates progress, technology, and wealth, the elderly are quietly left behind, forced to scrape together survival, while the rest of the world marvels at Seoul's skyline and Korea's global success. Understanding the plight of the elderly gives context to the pressures felt by younger generations. When entire families are burdened by financial instability, when the very old are struggling to survive, the psychological and social toll spreads across society. For many young South Koreans, life after school does not bring relief, it brings work. And work in South Korea can be as punishing as school, if not worse. The nation's economy is dominated by chaebols, massive family-owned conglomerates like Samsung, Hyundai, and LG. These companies are symbols of South Korea's global success, but for ordinary employees, they represent intense pressure, long hours, and an unrelenting culture of loyalty. The mental and physical toll is significant. Stress-related illnesses, burnout, and even deaths linked to overwork, sometimes called gwarosa, or death by overwork, are a grim reality for South Korean workers. And yet, leaving early or prioritizing personal life can be seen as disloyal or weak. South Korea has a peculiar and unsettling history. Almost every former president has faced prison, assassination, or suicide after leaving office. This phenomenon is often referred to as the Blue House Curse, named after the presidential residence, the Blue House. Park Chung-hee, the man who transformed South Korea into an economic powerhouse, was assassinated by his own intelligence chief. Roh Moo-hyun, a progressive leader, faced political persecution and ultimately took his own life after his term ended. Park Geun-hye, the country's first female president, was imprisoned for corruption. Even Lee Myung-bak, another former president, ended up behind bars. Why does this pattern exist? Some point to the intense scrutiny and factional politics in South Korea, where personal rivalries, corruption investigations, and public anger converge. Others see it as a reflection of a society that demands perfection at every level, not just from students or employees, but from those who hold the highest office. This curse casts a long shadow over the nation. Citizens witness the rise and fall of leaders, often in dramatic and tragic ways, reinforcing the sense that success and power come with deadly consequences. The same culture that drives children to excel in exams and young workers to sacrifice sleep and health extends all the way to the top. It is a stark reminder, South Korea is not just a land of innovation and idols. It is a country where ambition, pressure, and expectation can be fatal, whether you are 16, 80, or the president of a nation. The pressures, the expectations, and the hidden costs of this society are all connected. South Korea's story is one of dazzling success shadowed by relentless human struggle. And now, knowing the full scope of these pressures, you have to ask, what is the real cost of the South Korean dream? As if the pressures of school, work, beauty, and politics weren't enough, South Korea faces another modern challenge: internet and gaming addiction. South Korea is a global leader in internet speed and digital infrastructure. The country's high-tech connectivity is celebrated worldwide, but it has also created an environment where digital obsession can take over lives. Online gaming, social media, and instant communication dominate daily routines. Teenagers and young adults are particularly vulnerable. According to government reports, a significant portion of South Korean youth struggle with gaming addiction, with symptoms including withdrawal from family and friends, sleep deprivation, and declining school performance. Specialized rehabilitation centers have been established to help addicted teens, highlighting the severity of the problem. Social media adds another layer of pressure. Platforms constantly feed comparisons, achievements, appearance, lifestyle, reinforcing insecurities and anxiety. In a society already obsessed with perfection, the digital world amplifies stress. Bullying and cyber harassment are common, sometimes with tragic consequences. The consequences are not limited to the young. Adults also experience digital burnout, spending countless hours online for work, social obligations, or entertainment. The boundary between real life and virtual life becomes blurred, contributing to isolation, mental health issues, and in some cases, self-harm. This phenomenon shows how modern technology, while driving South Korea's global success, also intensifies the very pressures that have been building for generations. From education to work, beauty to politics, and now to the digital realm, South Koreans face relentless societal expectations. Understanding internet and gaming addiction is essential to seeing the full picture. It is not just a personal choice. It is another layer of systemic pressure in a society where achievement, appearance, and participation are never optional. And as these social pressures converge, they create a society where every aspect of life, offline and online, is governed by expectation, comparison, and constant performance. Yet, even beyond the screens and offices, another layer awaits, the stark contrasts between the country's public image and its hidden struggles. South Korea dazzles the world with its technology, pop culture, and economic success. Skyscrapers tower over Seoul, K-pop idols perform on global stages, and innovation seems limitless. On the surface, it looks like a nation of progress and prosperity. But beneath this glittering facade lies a society shaped by relentless pressures. From the crisis of youth suicide to the struggles of elderly poverty, from the pressure to look perfect to the unforgiving corporate world, and from digital addiction to the deadly stakes of politics, the cost of success is steep and often invisible. Children are pushed to their limits in schools and hagwons. Teenagers fight anxiety, depression, and social pressures amplified by social media. Adults work long hours, sacrificing personal time and health. The elderly survive in poverty and isolation, while even presidents cannot escape scrutiny, scandal, or tragedy. South Korea is a land of extremes, where glitter and despair coexist, where achievement is celebrated loudly, but the human cost often goes unnoticed.